Welcome to the Vietnamese Poetry Literature channel. Today we will listen to the Old Friend work of author Thach Lam. Let's listen. Con and I, my friend who has been in debt for hundreds of years, are sitting at the same table discussing business. The tea kettle is almost weak. The clock chimed 11 o'clock, the lamp gradually flooded, and the kerosene in the bulb, poured by one hand in moderation, could only burn so much. The solitude of a late night in a small province is so sad, it reminds me of the bustling, bright nights in Hanoi. Con was about to take the baby to rest, when suddenly there was a knock on the door and the old nanny came in. "Sir, is there a woman asking you?" I was disappointed and said, "Why don't you say I'm absent and tell them to come another time?" "Dear, that person has something to do, I don't dare to do it on my own." I looked up in surprise at my wife, and Con was also looking at me in surprise, his willow leaf eyebrows starting to frown. I told the old nurse, "Come out and ask who it is." As soon as the nanny turned away, Con's face darkened and he glared at me and said, "Women, girls, what do you ask in the middle of the night? Why don't you ask the old nanny to get rid of it?" At that moment, the nurse came back. "It's Miss Lei Min, sir." I was stunned. "Lei Min, the friend you met in Hanoi 3 years ago, why are you back here now?" She came to the real secret. "I wonder why you came to me this late at night? Going home to avoid disaster?" During a session when my enthusiasm was still vibrant, I promised to always be willing to help her in difficult steps. That promise, and the memory of an enthusiastic youth that flashed through my memory, made me wonder. A concern suddenly came to haunt my mind, shattering the peace I had kept for these few years. The old nurse was still waiting. I told Con, "I'll go in and watch my brother sleep first. I have to go to work." Then hastily walking to avoid the bait that I could guess, I went out to receive guests. Looking at the guests, I was surprised, wondering if it was Lei Min's ex. The saffron shirt over the white blouse further highlights the poverty hidden inside, 2 bags stuffed with strange things, mouths open as if hungry. A shabby silk back is glimpsed through thin satin fibers. I remembered the old Lei Min, how shiny she was in her dragon cloth shirt, everywhere she went, promoting the use of internal chemistry, and she herself was a beautiful example. Even her appearance was different from before, her previously sharp eyes were now sluggish as if haunted by a veil of worry. The cheeks are now sunken, I don't know if it's because of age or because of life's troubles. The other cheeks have become sunken, the cheekbones are high, perhaps to represent a person with a difficult fate. I was shy, I hadn't asked a friendly question in a long time, she also seemed embarrassed and shy. After a moment, she said softly, "Man Quan must see that you are very different from before. Now, why'd I blame you?" In a moment of looking at the truth, I understood that I had changed a lot, and I was jealous of my female comrade. My half-seasoned bourgeois body has now naturally become a public servant. Even if I have to worry about making sure my wife and children are well off, I will be satisfied. The romantic life of chivalry belongs to the past. Her coming here was like a thunderbolt in the dawn. Then, not knowing whether to tell myself or someone else, I replied, "Yes, people in our lives are different from time to time." Lei Min seemed not to pay attention to that silly philosophical sentence. "I came here to bother you with something, I wonder if you are willing?" I felt a bit guilty. I don't understand what this female comrade wants to show. Song also reluctantly replied, "Whatever it is, just tell me." Lei Min began to recount his past life. "Now everyone has their own place, everyone takes care of their own destiny. As for me, I was like an ant, wandering here and there, unable to do anything. Then one day, depressed and weak, I gave myself to a merchant. Hearing that she had a husband felt like a burden was lifted from me, and I couldn't help but listen to the rest of the story. Her story is like the stories of hundreds of thousands of other troubled families. The merchant lied to her, he already had a first wife. Perhaps because she was jealous, she was an educated person and couldn't stand being a servant. One day, she took her child and set out to find a way to become independent. She came to ask me to find a private teaching place, especially if the family is willing to raise a teacher to teach their children at home. It would be better, because all she wants is a peaceful place. After she finished speaking, she looked away, as if ashamed of herself for such a trivial wish. Rest in peace. Is that all we pray for now? Suddenly I felt uncomfortable in my silk clothes. My room was filled with copper tops, tea chests, mahogany shelves, furniture that made me look covetous in the eyes of my colleagues in this small province. I couldn't hide the shyness that made my face hot. I turned back to the direction Lei Min had just met when she also looked at me. The two of us looked at each other awkwardly. She added urgently, "Anyway, please try to help me." I agreed to get it over with. But I also understand that, in the face of such undeserved hardship, a mediocre promise would be too insipid. Not being able to find a more effective way to help her, I felt like a coward. But how? Invite you to stay here? I thought about Khan's anger and was afraid, wouldn't she destroy the house? Isn't this a rude question? Why don't you come play a little earlier? Lei Min seemed to understand that he had been unreasonable up until now. She apologized confusedly. I only remember the place on the alley Brother Bien gave me. When I came to ask at 6 o'clock in the evening, they just wandered around, and I didn't belong to this provincial town, so I kept wandering around. And when I was in Hanoi, I often stayed up late. You often say that night is the day of intellectuals. I always thought so, that's why I dared to suddenly come here. Finding a job for her, introducing a young woman like her into an old-fashioned family, I thought was difficult, but I didn't think I had the courage to do it. Helping her with a small capital so she can find a way to become independent, I still consider it my duty. But my aunt holds the key, and Khan is not someone who can change hearts with kindness. I wanted to find something to console her, but I felt that I needed to console her more, so I was speechless. The clock struck 12 loudly in the dead of night. I was startled and looked at Lei Min, scared. It's been an hour in the outhouse. Khan must have been suspicious, but by now I must have been muttering boredly. Lei Min seemed to know what he meant and stood up to say goodbye. I opened the door to see her out. Watching her disappear into the darkness, I remembered the days when we were young and we still met late at night in a dark street on the outskirts of Hanoi. I closed the door and went back in to see Khan still holding the lantern and waiting on the chair. When I came in, she talked nonsense, blaming her for not knowing how to love her wife and children, and for being so old, only 30. And still planning on someone. Khan's voice was angry as if she was suffering from something, then she bowed her face and cried. I had to try and persuade her before she calmed down. When she took the baby to rest, when the quiet silence of the late night returned to the room, I bowed my head and thought. From the deep, distant past, I see a clear image emerge, the image of me when I was a teenager, an enthusiastic young man, passionate about good and beautiful things, always dreaming. While thinking about great successes, a young man does not know the bitter truth of life. I thought about my current situation, an official in a small province, living a quiet, wealthy life, having enough food and clothing, not having to worry about anything. I seemed to feel a better fit. Then I wondered which of those two images, the image of the enthusiastic teenager and the image of the comfortable bourgeois, was truly mine. I don't dare answer. At the end of the work, please support me with the like button and subscribe to the channel to listen to more works.